Hello, welcome to In Conversation With, a series of discussions with people who hold advanced degrees in the life sciences about their careers and career journeys. My name is Chris Heinen. I'm a professor of medicine at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine and the director of postdoctoral affairs here at UConn Health. Hey there, Chandrima, how are you?
Hi, Chris. I'm good. Hello, everyone. My name is Chandrima Majumdar, and I'm a postdoc at the University of California, Berkeley. I'm a member of the ASBMB Education and Professional Development Committee, and we are the committee that hosts this podcast. We're excited to continue our series of conversations about the vast array of careers that are available to grad students and postdocs in the life sciences.
So we are delighted today to welcome our guest, and that is Dr. Shagha Ostadjoo, who leads the assay development group at New England Biolabs. Shagha, welcome.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. So let's start, just sort of generally tell us a little bit about what it's like working at NEB.
Sure. I find working at AB very rewarding. I love the people, the culture, and how science immersive it is. The emphasis of NAB on the customers, their happiness, and the innovation part that we pursue at NAB.
hmm Yeah. So kind of give us a sense, just sort of generally, kind of what your role involves and who you work with, that kind of a thing.
Sure. I have a team of three biochemists. We are tasked with coming up with activity assays and analytical methods for the GMP grade portfolio of NAB. It's a short and sweet, it's quite important part of the business. We work and collaborate with different teams, and mainly our the QC team for the GMP grade enzymes or products. We develop activity assays, methods, we troubleshoot, we support. That's the main, I guess, part of what we do.
Yeah, yeah. So for the role that you're in now, is it sort of more managing the team? Are you like in the laboratory still?
No, I left the lab like during the first year I've become the
Okay.
manager of the team. So it's more of a managing and facilitating, making sure that we're all on the same page and the troubleshooting are going smoothly and the transfer of the methods go as planned. So I left the lab pretty quickly into my management role.
Yeah. Yeah.
I see. So, like, what does a day or like a week in your job look like typically now that you're more in this managerial position?
Typically, I attend a few meetings every day. I try to minimize the attendance of my team in those meetings because they prefer to be in the lab and get the experiments going. Um, just overlooking the projects, making sure we hit the objectives, the goals. Sometimes the objectives and goals based on the vision of the company or the team change, so I make sure that we are transitioning smoothly from one goal or objective to another one. Um, Reading a lot of development reports, making sure that the language is clear and scientific. Reading STMs, things of that sort. So managing projects and the facilitation of the transfer and activity assay developments.
I see. And that's like from your perspective as a team lead. Could you also give us an idea of what it would be like as a scientist in your team or in a similar team?
Yeah, so everyone in my team does like works on at least two projects. They're all very creative as a developer, so I want to keep that alive. So everybody has like one project that they're starting, kind of designing, developing, and another project that are probably towards the end and completion. So they're more routine work. Um, we discuss what the activity assay is going to be about, what the enzymatic reaction is, what parts we can, measure, what the analysis part should look like, the analytical method should be, what's facilitated in the other lab that we're transferring. So everyone kind of, we all sat together at the beginning of
hmm
the start of a project. We discuss the project, we brainstorm, we come up with ideas, and the person that's going to be assigned the task or the project to kind of they go and work independently. I manage my team based on the individual. Some people would like more kind of hands-on and some people like it more hands-off. So I tailor my management so everyone in my team would be at the most productive and happy as they can. So again, running a project is usually independently on the member with the member of the team who takes that project.
So you guys are brainstorming and trying to solve how to actually develop the assay. But in terms
Yeah.
of determining what assays you should be developing,
Hmm.
where does that come from? Is that something you're involved in as well, or is that coming from someone
Yeah.
else? Yeah.
So every time we start a project, I send a company-wide email said, has anyone worked on this enzyme, for example, before? So I can get all the knowledge that already exists in a company. It goes like
Mhm.
50 years before I joined. There is often a good amount of knowledge and expertise available. So we kind of based on our project on that. And then, of course, we do literature review. We talk to a lot of people who worked with that enzyme. We just kind of decide on the method. Could it be what kind of method, analytical method it be based on the and the lab that we transfer the method to? Do they have this instrument? Are they comfortable running it that way? What are
Yeah.
the situation in their lab? So that part, I sit down with my team and we kind of look at the activity and say how many ways we can measure this activity, the most robust way, reproducible way, and sometimes I have to make the call between one or two methods that are available.
Yeah. And the process of saying, yep, this is an enzyme we probably
Yeah.
need an assay for.
Yeah.
Is that part of your job?
That's a committee. There's a committee for that
A committee
decides
for that.
based on either we have a customer looking for a GMP grade version of one of our catalog
Okay.
enzymes, or what we think that would become very important diagnostic or therapeutics, and then we decide that this is an enzyme that could become GMP grade, and then my team becomes involved from there.
Very good. Yep.
So I guess when you were finishing up your postdoc, what drew you to working at like an industry job like this and working in
Yeah.
leading a team such as yours?
Um, I think I didn't quite find my place in academia. I didn't find publishing very rewarding.
Hmm.
Um, I think it was just would take fun out of doing science, and so I knew that I didn't want to stay too long in a postdoc period when I would do 5 years or 6 years of postdoc, depending on the job market in academia, until I find a position that I really like. Also, I found with some collaboration with industry during my PhD and my postdoc that I kind of really liked what I do as a scientist be reflected on a product or technology or an application fairly quickly. So I I think I was lucky enough to know myself well in that point, that to know that, well, I'm not the type who would thrive in academia or would have a meaningful career for myself. And at the end of my second contract of a postdoc, I decided I would not renew it, knowing well that I might not have a job for a few months, which actually happened. I didn't have any job between my postdoc and my first position out of academia, but I was okay with taking that risk. Um, but generally, I think the main reason was that I really wanted to see what I do in the lab getting reflected on it on something that is tangible, be used, whichever it might be, as a product, as a kit, is like a helping with a drug discovery part of a project or some of anything of that sort.
Is it just to follow up on this? Because I think some of our listeners might hear themselves in your answer. And so I kind of want to explore that a little further because they may be going through some of these same questions in
Yeah.
their mind, right? So is it sort of the actual application? Is it like the immediacy of being able to develop something and then seeing it put out there? What can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, I mean, I really like that. I mean, I can see, for example, now when we work on an activity assay, that GMP grade material leaves the lab and to the hands of customers. And although we don't know what they're going to use it for, we can guess like it's going to be our diagnostic or therapeutics as the for the GMP grade material. So I really like that. I can say, you know what, you made that happen. You kind of through my teams like you kind of made that happen. You had that impact. You had your meaningful career kind of works that way. I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed the pace in industry. I'm someone who's comfortable with changing. The goals were changing and objectives changing. I adapt easily to those changes, and I kind of like it. Some might not like it.
Mhm.
So for me, I think going to industry kind of matched my personality and who I have always seen myself as a scientist. But as you mentioned, Chris, the immediacy of seeing your work on something tangible was very important to me. It became important.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. I think one of the things you just now mentioned was like you knew yourself, you knew what skills you had and where you would thrive, like your adaptability to new projects.
Yeah.
Were there like some other traits that you recognized that have helped you succeed in your job here at NEB?
Yeah, I think you kind of need a sense of optimism to not just survive, but hope for a very shiny outcome. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was a PhD candidate, and I told my PI, he was a very decent scientist, said that it's really tough. I don't know how to how to finish this. And he said you need a mental toughness for, as a PhD candidate to
Yeah.
kind of complete your work here because it's going to take 4.5 to 6 years. It's not going to be just a year and a two. And that really helped me. I just gonna say, you know what, either I'm coming up with skills that strengthen that mental toughness, or there will be other ways that I could contribute to things that I like. And that really helped come into industry with that attitude of, yeah, I mean, we can do it. There is also an optimism that I kind of inject into my team of just going th around things with sense of curiosity and wonder, because
Mhm.
that's what I really, really, really like about biochemistry and biology in general.
It really is true, right? I mean, it's kind of true for all the positions that one can do. It's why you went to get a PhD was that sense of
Yeah.
curiosity. And I think that's the point is that is so important for doing the PhD, but then it just translates into all sorts of different careers
Yes.
afterwards,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, I mean, I don't see I'm a different person when I was doing a PhD or a postdoc than I am managing a team. I'm
Yeah.
still the same person my
Yeah.
goals have changed for my life, but that's fine. I mean, it's going to change in the next, I guess, 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Were there some like challenges that you faced while you were transitioning from a postdoc to working in industry, and like how did you navigate those?
I think what I saw in industry first was that there's more hierarchy, that I didn't see it in academia. I had a PI, I had colleagues at work, like who were like myself, PhD candidates or postdocs, and there was less of that visible to me. But in industry, it is more clear. You have a manager, and your manager could have an executive director, and that person could, report to CEO. So this is a chain of, I guess, responsibilities that for me was an adoption. I have to just adopt my point of view to that. Also, when you, for example, go to a PhD program, you know that you're going to be there for at least 4.5 years. So the industry, you don't know. I mean, you're there for as long as your vision kind of is aligns with the vision of the company, or as long as the company is going in that direction. Um, I think I had to adjust my point of view to the environment change from academia and industry. And it wasn't torturous or a struggle. It was just kind of get used to a different climate.
Yeah. Is that a little different at a slightly bigger company like NEB? That sort of, not quite sure if 2, 3 years from now the things are going to change? Or is there a little more?
Um, I think NAB, the way it works, I feel like the changes are not that rapid. So, and we're well informed if any change is going to happen, for example. So it's
Mhm.
not a surprise. And we know that NAB like walks along the rest of the biotech in general. So
Yeah.
I don't expect a lot of surprises that I wouldn't know how to weather. And it's such a supportive and collaborative environment that it never worried me or concerned me.
Okay.
I still feel comfortable with little changes happen, for example, in the department. They're not out of the blue. They're something that is predictable or expected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. We talked a little bit about like some challenges you faced while you transitioned from your postdoc to a company. What were some skills that you learned during your PhD or postdoc that you felt set you up really well to succeed in this kind of role?
Um, I remember my PhD PI would ask me to sit down and just do the math calculation next to him, and he would do it separately, and I would do it separately, and he would just compare. That really, like, was like it was bothered me back then, but now I kind of see the value of it. Just being comfortable doing things like doing the math calculation or just figuring things out or looking really closely at an enzymatic reaction or knowing why you need your kinetics look like that if you're going to make that decision. Back when I was in school, I didn't really see the point of it, or wasn't really sure why I was needed or was required to do so, but now I see.
Yeah.
So I think it's very good to question things that you're asked in academia, but also it's also good to have this, a little bit of trust that well, the things that you do might become useful for you in the future. Either you will continue doing them or you would just think, you know what, that's just irrelevant. I'm not going to do them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So talking about your career trajectory, you'd mentioned how, you left the bench behind and now you're in a managerial role. Is that something that you were, in fact, we can even go back because you didn't start at NEB, you started at Newchem, right? Coming
Yes.
out of your postdoc. And so if you
Yeah.
talk about that transition through the stages as you move up that hierarchy you
Mhm.
mentioned earlier, is that something that just sort of naturally happens because you start developing experience of the company? Is that something that you're actively working toward? Can you maybe explain that process a little bit?
Um, at Newcomb, I was a scientist, and when I left Newcomb and I joined NEB, the asset development group was forming, but it wasn't fully formed. And I think I worked there for a few months and I was supervising two people in that lab, but I wasn't their manager. I was just kind of more of a senior scientist. And then I think my manager asked me, "Do you want to just, manage the asset development team?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, I would love that." I mean, I always kind of enjoyed the team building, the mentoring, the kind of looking at the bigger picture, but also making sure that little things are done properly. And when I stepped into it, I think I didn't have a lot of confidence, but I knew I could do it because I really loved doing it, and I kind of grew in the role. And of course, I was given the opportunity. I had the support of my managers, of the directors, so that also really helpful. Like you have somebody who trusts you, and I say, you know what, this is the role, and then you have the trust in yourself that I always have. Like I can figure it out on the job because I know I can learn a lot of things at the same time. I've done a PhD and a couple of postdocs, so why can't it be anything different? And it is true. A lot of times we learn on the job the kind of things that we need
Absolutely.
to facilitate other people's role if you're a manager or if you're a scientist to get your experiments done properly. And so I think I kind of had that in me, and it grew when it had an opportunity and a space to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there is this parallel again to academia in that sense, and that those of us that are PIs of labs obviously start off as bench scientists, those of us that
Yeah.
work in a wet lab, and that's the training part. But many of us, like myself, uh, we eventually leave the bench, and when we're PI, that's not unusual, I don't think. But we take on these other roles of managing projects, managing people, right? And you're right, it's something that you learn on the job, basically.
Yeah.
So the same thing applies, obviously, in industry, at least at a larger company like you work at.
Absolutely. If you feel, I think that you need a space and you need people who trust you and they
Right.
will be there to mentor you and show you the way, which there's abundance of that in NAB. Like I've never sent an email and I've always gotten a response in like a matter of half an hour maximum with lots of good information. So that is a very cultivating environment. And I really do hope that a lot of people could benefit from that, either in academia or industry. Those are extremely important for anyone to gain confidence in their role, whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's a great point. Absolutely.
Coming back to some of these managerial skills, was everything something you had to learn while doing it, or are there like courses or workshops or things like that available that train you for that role?
Yes, so luckily NAB provides manager training, and that there's like a series of courses that are in person and like I can just manage it myself, like watching some I guess presentations in my own time and attending certain meetings that NAB provides for their managers, and they're required to take those. Also, I've had experiences with having managers and different PIs and different directors, and I had this little notebook of the things I liked about them and the things I did not like about them. And I make sure to do the things I liked about them and less of the things that I thought were just not necessary or it wasn't good for me. And I always check with my team that I ask for feedback. Because of them, I'm a better biochemist, I'm a better manager. So this is very helpful.
That's interesting. So did you recruit the people that work for you?
The third member, yes.
Yes.
Like your first year, I had two already working, were colleagues, and I became the manager, and the third person I recruited. Yeah.
So maybe that would be interesting to explore from that side of the table. What are you looking for when you recruit someone to those roles?
Someone with a sense of wonder and that and enthusiasm. I think it's important to see that someone wants to grow, wants to have a meaningful career, and are willing to be open to new experiences, new experiments, new environments. Um, and of course a good sense of, knowledge. And I needed somebody who knew about enzyme kinetics, biochemistry to a degree. I didn't expect them to know everything that we were going to do in the lab, but that basic knowledge was also important.
And if I could ask, what kind of training are you looking for someone in these roles? Meaning, what degree of education? Do they do a postdoc? That kind of a thing.
Um, Usually master's or PhD, not
Masters.
necessarily postdoc. I think just after COVID, a lot of people would get hired in industry right after their PhD. Maybe
Mhm.
before that or now is a bit different. I mean, having a postdoc is an excellent, experience. That experience doesn't go away. But I think a master's or a PhD either would be a sufficient enough of a degree to apply for this kind of roles.
So a master's or a PhD would be the minimum, but maybe a postdoc certainly wouldn't hurt a candidate.
Absolutely.
But there might be a case where that extra experience is something you would look on favorably.
It really depends on what their postdocs have been on,
Okay.
because or how many years they spend on a postdoc. I mean, if someone is at a postdoc for 5 or 6 years, really depend on what kind of labs they've been at or kind of the work they did. Those also matter. And I think having a postdoc and an experience is also very useful because when they come to the lab, they are more independent. They can also take on more responsibility of maybe mentoring others, taking
Yeah.
interns, students. So that becomes helpful further in the lab.
Yeah.
So, I want to take a step back to like, maybe when you were in graduate school or your postdoc. Can you tell us a little bit about the research you did then and what you thought about doing for a career later on and how you set yourself up for success at that time, like during grad
Yeah.
school, for your future career?
I think I started my PhD project was on saccharification of lignocellulosic materials with enzyme using enzyme fungal enzymes. So I basically joined a fungal lab. They had really great research on strain improvement, identifying novel enzymes from different strains of fungi. It was very, very interesting. And my work was on how we can just get the non-edible parts of plants, cellulosic materials, and kind of degrade them with enzymes and setting up those activity assays and find the ones that have like a wider substrate specificity range. They would act like really superior to the others. Um, Honestly, back then I didn't know what kind of career I would have because it was intended for producing biofuels.
Hmm.
And that kind of was like there was a time that I didn't know it. I was going to go in that direction or use my expertise in assay development for something else. And I continue with the postdoc again for biomass degradation, enzymatic degradation of biomass, and continue that. And it became very interesting because if you're a biochemist, you know what solubility is such an important factor in setting up your reactions. And then there I was trying to find ways to degrade these insoluble natural materials with using enzymes. Um, how I set myself for success. I think I read a lot about these things, and I would imagine how it is in an environment, how enzymes evolve in a fungi for millions of years to be able to get into these highly structured and organized materials. So I think I never lost my sense of curiosity and thinking about how it's going to be useful for future. Um, it was an interesting era doing that kind of research.
So as you were giving that answer, I was just wondering, and maybe I'm wrong, when you get into assay development, it seems like it's a lot more focused.
Yes.
Um, and so my first thought was, well, maybe you don't take that 50,000 foot view as much as maybe you did as a PhD student. And I
Yeah.
guess one, is that true? And two, is that something you miss, or something like, no, actually that fits my personality and the way I like to approach things, and so that's a good thing.
I think it's the latter. I think
Yeah.
I like more things more focused in
Okay.
the view and not just so spread out because I have a tendency to go lateral myself. So if it's if it's a topic that I'm working on is more like narrowed down, I feel like more comfortable with
Yeah.
leading that. I mean, there are times when we are developing activity assays for GMP grade enzymes. I feel like, oh, we could do so much on the research side, and I remind myself, but this is not my job. So,
Yeah.
keeping that balance is also we have become a skill.
Yeah. Very good. So for your graduate work, part of that work ended up being a collaboration with a company. And I guess I'm wondering, is that just something that you stumbled on because of what you're working on? Is that something you sought out? And what role did that play, perhaps, in thinking about what you wanted to do in the future?
I really like that question. So, when I joined in my PhD program and in the PhD lab, there was already that collaboration existed.
Okay.
And because my postdoc also related, second one related to that subject that I worked on in PhD, I reached out to our PhD collaborator and I asked him if they were willing to kind of collaborate with my new lab and the postdoc lab. And they were very willing and happy to help. And actually, they did help a lot.
Oh, very cool. So was that experience something that informed you or informs you now? Is that something that you would advise trainees to seek those opportunities out, or would you imagine your path really probably wouldn't have changed whether you did that or not?
It was really good on my resume because I brought that collaboration into the lab and I mean we published a couple papers because of
Uh-huh.
that collaboration. But I think the networking for the sake of networking is a very interesting and fulfilling experience. But if someone is networking to get a job or just look for certain things, it might be less interesting. They might find themselves less open to opportunities. So what I would
Mm.
suggest anybody to say sensibly yes to opportunities that come their way and benefit from them when the time feels right or looks right.
Makes sense. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you. I want to change gears a little bit. So, like looking at your resume, you are an international scientist. You did your PhD and postdoc, and even had your first position at Canada. What drew you to working in the US? What was the process of finding a job in a different country like?
Yeah, I met a good friend of mine from college. by accident in Montreal, where you used to live, and I kind of asked her how things, and she mentioned that she works in Boston and lives in Montreal, and I kind of got curious
Mm,
about biotech, I guess, scene in Boston. And from one person to another friend, a lot of my friends actually ended up working in Boston. So I did a
Mm,
lot of research in that area with my friends and colleagues who were in working in some sort of biotech scene in Boston. And I kind of grew more and more curious and willing to take that step and was like, I really want to know how it is, how it feels like to work in an environment that is really a hub for biology, biochemistry, biotechnology. And I took that a step. This is, I think, maybe the fourth time I immigrated from one country to another. So um, I think back then it wasn't such a big deal to make to take that a step.
mhm. Yeah, and we like briefly talked about networking for networking's sake and
Yeah.
like, getting to know people and in other companies. What role did networking play in your getting a job and like how did you network effectively across like an international border?
Um, I attend, well, for example, when I would go to a conference, I would just talk to a lot of people I found their research interesting. And I would get their cards. I would, for example, add them in LinkedIn when LinkedIn kind of became a very
mm,
good place to have these connections. But I was really truly interested in what they were doing. And
Mm-hmm.
that expanded the visibility to myself, to what I was looking for example, when I was looking for a job. And also, some people they have really good at looking at my resume. So I asked a friend some of these people I've met before. They said, you know what, could you take a look at my resume? Could you take a look at my cover letter and see how it sounds, how it looks, for example, because I'm coming out of academia, I probably write a resume like a grad school. How can I make it look like that I really know what I'm talking about when I talk about myself and industry? And a lot of the points that they gave me was very, very, very useful and helped me actually my resume to be seen and selected. That is, I think, networking for the sake of networking, just to grow that.
Mm-hmm.
Attending conferences, attending networking events, wherever you see them, I think they are becoming more and more of a thing in many places. So benefit from those and just be interested in learning about what people do.
yeah, there's such an emphasis on networking. There's networking workshops, and everyone in
Yeah,
career fields talks about networking. It's not a to B kind of a thing, right?
absolutely.
It's very much indirect, and you never know which connection is actually going to spark something.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, I like that when you say that because sometimes you have a very fluid, nice conversation with someone, and sometimes it's just awkward. You don't know what to say next. And so just take it as it is. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it just leaves you with more questions.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
fair. You just got to keep doing it. And then I just wanted to ask one other question, especially for our international listeners. When you're negotiating a job offer, there are many things that you can negotiate, like salary perks, things like that. And international scientists do need to negotiate immigration support, right? So just to be clear, I'm not asking for immigration advice, and people should definitely go to like immigration lawyers for that. But how did you approach those conversations? Were there things that you wished you knew before going into such a conversation? What did you learn from that?
Because I've moved a few times during my career, I know that these questions should come up first. Like these are the second or third questions you ask a recruiter or an HR person. Because going into more discussions about the role without knowing that you're gonna be sponsored for your, for example, work visa is kind of pointless. So I would highly recommend that, and people expect that at HR level, at recruiter level, they expect that international students or workers would want to know about sponsorship for themselves or their partners and spouses. And if that's most companies have already policies, established within themselves to answer those questions pretty quickly. So this is one of the things that I would definitely check before going into more discussions about the work and the salary and benefits and things of that sort.
Yeah. Interesting.
Um, well, Thank you for like shedding light on that aspect because I know that's not often spoken about, but like is constantly on the mind of people that have
Yeah, it could be a source of anxiety. Yeah, absolutely.
yeah. And then maybe just to like close out, I wanted to ask one final question, which is if you had a way to meet your younger self, like maybe when you were finishing undergrad or starting grad school, what is one thing you'd like to tell her about how her career is going to play out?
I would recommend myself to face things with a sense of wonder and courage because a lot of things you can't really control. The offers, the interviews, the path, but this thing you can always maintain in yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Very well said. Well, thank you so much, Shagha. It was so nice speaking with you today and
Thanks.
learning about your career and hearing your insights. We really appreciate it.
Thank you
For
so much for
listeners
having
who,
me.
yes, of course. For listeners who want to continue the conversation, you can visit the ASBMB Active site where you can comment on this episode or any of the past ones, ask any questions. We'll get you follow-up answers as we can. If you want to suggest other topics or people for us to talk about, you can do it all there. Thank you again, everybody.
Thank you.
thank
Bye now.
you.